So welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here today. We have a very exciting panel of professionals for you to learn from, hopefully. My name is Renda Quinn. I'm the Director of Parent Relations. And we do this event once a semester, knowledge transfer, and we choose a different topic each time. Something that I can tell you is that regardless of the career that we're talking about, there's usually a common thread, which you'll hear. What they are about to tell you, I think, will transmit across various careers, no matter where you decide to go. So I hope that you will find this very helpful as you search for a career once you're out. Just want to poll the audience really quick. Are you all engineering majors? Anyone not an engineering major? Okay, what major are you?
International business.
International business, perfect.
But
okay.
Change to engineering. Right after
Looking at double.
Oh, double major, perfect. I love that. Anyone else with a different major than engineering? No? Okay. Oh, international business. That's right. Well, and speaking of that, I want to thank our co-sponsors. The Student International Business Council helped us sponsor this today and drive attendance. Student Alumni Association, obviously the Shiley-Marcos School of Engineering. Society for Women Engineers, any of you here today? Thank you very much, I love it. Career Services, thank you. And the School of Business and Arts and Sciences, they've all helped us with today's event. If you are going to get passport approved, I don't know if that's something that you need, but make sure you sign in so that you get the credit for your passports. So you all hopefully received a copy of the panelist biographies. If not, they're on the table in the back. You can grab them on the way out. What's great about them, not only do you walk away with their information, but you'll also have their contact information so that if you want to email them after today's panel, you can do that. So thank you all for allowing us to provide that to our students. So we have an agenda, and I think you may have seen that, but we'll start out with a moderator, Chell Roberts, who will be moderating the panel. After that, we're going to leave time for you to ask your questions. So feel free to ask your questions. We are taping today, but don't worry, we won't get your faces unless you turn around. You'll stay anonymous, I promise. Oh, you have nothing to do with it? Okay, good. So I just want to tell you what a special day it is because we have Bob Berry here. And let me tell you a little bit about Bob Berry. Bob Berry is a past parent, was the president of our parent board, he and his wife Roberta, and it's knowledge transfer was his idea. And because of knowledge transfer, we have generated probably over 70 internships and jobs from our professionals who sit on the panels. So we can't thank you enough for this. It's really been a very successful event that we carry on semester after semester. So thank you very much. Did you want to say anything about that? Or?
Well, I would just say this, thank you to Renda and her wonderful support. And really, the knowledge transfer was created to have, as we have a phenomenal panel here, there's friends of the university, there's parents of the university, and there's alumni and others that have supported the program. But as was mentioned by Shell up front, is really at these events, hopefully there's some great knowledge transferred, but the job opportunities and the internships have been really powerful. So I encourage you to come up after the program and email the panelists, because oftentimes either there's a direct opportunity with one of the firms represented here, or often within the networks that the group up here has. And one thing that you'll find that all these panelists have is a phenomenal love of USD, and so there's a real interest to support the students.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. So again, thank you all for being here today. I hope this proves to be just a very informative panel for you. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Dean Dr. Shell Roberts from the Shiley-Marcos School of Engineering, and he will be our moderator today.
So before we start, maybe we'll just say a few things about Shiley-Marcos School of Engineering and about you. So I was joking with you a little bit at the beginning. Most of you heard me about being conspicuous, but I think that it's true, that it's very important to take opportunities when you're young, when you're going through your engineering programs, to meet and to network. I came to this school, USD, because it's already a great school. Just starting off, it's ranked. It's a 22nd ranked school. But it has some really special characteristics and really special features, not only in terms of size, in terms of the amount of hands-on you do, and in terms of the commitment and passion of the faculty. And you're seeing the commitment and passion of other people besides the faculty. And those are alumni and other supporters of our program and of our programs that really care. So networking with them and being that conspicuous person that gets out and pushes and finds out and networks is really, really important. I came partly to a private from a public university because I'd spent 1 year investigating and benchmarking programs around the world, all private programs, well, almost all private programs. And I noticed the distinction in what you're able to do at a phenomenal undergraduate institution in terms of real difference and value added. And this is the sort of place that can be that. And I believe that in the next 5 to 10 years, we will not only be a 22nd ranked school, but the pedigree, the degree that you get will be pushing toward a top 10 school in the nation, which is good for you, and it's good for all of you also in doing that. And so that's a direction that we're going. I've spoken individually with all the panelists on the phone, and they represent some very unique and different perspectives. Now, they're going to probably tell you some of the same things, but they're going to tell you some very different things. Range of experience, range of life experience. So with that, I want to jump right in and start understanding those different life experiences you have. So let's start down at the end with Luis. And what I'd like to know, we're going to ask you all this, is briefly tell us about what you do now. What is it that you have passion about? What do you do professionally? And how did you get there?
How did I get here?
How did you, well, not just at the table. How did you get to where you are professionally today?
I am a VP of engineering at a local biotech firm. I've been working with biotech medical devices for the last 35 years or so. And I came originally from Peru. I came to study. I got a master's in electrical engineering, a master's in computer science. The opportunities that you have here in this area, the college, the education, what you can get out of it, you can't get nowhere else. So right now I am designing systems for the Department of Defense to be able to diagnose traumatic brain injury. My specialty is in lasers, so I do use lasers for most of what I do, and biomedical engineering. That's about it.
Great. Lauren, how did you get here? What are you doing?
So I'm currently a systems engineer at BAE Systems. I went to USD. I graduated in 2010 with a degree in industrial and systems engineering. How I got to where I am, I started in internships while in college, and I was trying to figure out what I like to do. I did 2 different internships, one at Hamilton Sundstrand, working in industrial engineering on the repair of auxiliary power units for aircrafts, doing process improvement. Then I moved to Raytheon, where I was doing systems engineering work, and I was working on a mission defense system, doing systems architecture. I then did a senior project for L3 Communications that was in supplier improvement, looking at the different suppliers and finding ways to improve for a certain product manufacturing process. After my internships, it really set me up to have a good resume, to start looking for jobs. I was looking specifically for leadership development programs, which a lot of larger companies have these programs. I ended up in the Engineering Leadership and Development Program. They also have an Operations Leadership and Development Program, an HR, IT, at all different companies. But I ended up in the engineering. And what this program does and what I went through was 3 years, and it had both leadership training, including 3 week-long conferences with people from all over the country from my company at one site doing leadership trainings. I also had, we got a master's. We were required to get a master's in engineering, which was paid for, which was a nice benefit. We also had mentors, and one of the biggest benefits that I saw from it was every 6 months to a year, we were required to rotate in positions. We were required to do one position out of engineering. So when I was in college, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with my degree. I don't think any of us really know exactly what we want to do. So being in the rotations, I really got to explore different options. I started doing manufacturing engineering, which at my company is different than engineering, it's operations. And in manufacturing, I was working on antenna systems, working with first-time builds, doing process improvement, failure analysis. And then I moved on to systems engineering position. And I moved sites as well. So the first position was in New Jersey, and then I went to New Hampshire, where I was working on a research project where we were developing systems architecture for sensor systems for the whole company. We have tons of sensor systems, and we were developing systems architecture for all different types of programs that could utilize this. That led me to my next rotation in systems engineering in Long Island. And there I was working on a sensor system. And during that program, I actually got to be a field engineer, which means I worked directly with the customer, with the Air Force. I was going from site to site, training the customer on our product, showing them how to use it, integrating our system actually onto the aircraft, and learning a lot in that position. My last rotation in the leadership program included, I got to go internationally. So I went to the UK, and I was working on joysticks for aircrafts. And now I'm back in San Diego after graduating the ELDP program, which was very difficult. You have work and plus 20 hours a week of studying with everyone else in the leadership program. After graduating in July, I got back to San Diego, back home, same company. Now I'm in my full-time position, working as a systems engineer for BAE Systems. I'm working on a flight navigation system, software system for the Air Force. And I'm actually on the integration and test team where we create tests to make sure our software is meeting requirements that we have to meet for the Air Force. And that's kind of where I am today. Finished a master's, and 3 years later, done a lot and learned a lot, and still learning what I like to do and where I'm going. So.
And you had to study 20 hours a week while you're working?
Yeah.
Oh, so it never changes, you mean?
We had like study
keep
groups,
studying.
'cause it was the technical training, it was a master's, but it was also through BAE, so we had training at work. There we got paid 4 hours a week, we were in training, plus homework. The homework assignments were about 20 hours a week.
I think it sounds fun. So if you were, back when you were a student, sitting out in this audience, we probably didn't have knowledge transfer at that time, but did you have any idea where this was all taking you?
No, I had no idea. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I started learning from the internships and then kind of just took jumps.
But great surprise and great success. Well, congratulations. Rasheed, how about you? What are you doing right now, and how did you get there?
All right. Well, recently, career has taken me down a little bit of a different path. But I'll start from the beginning. When I was in school, similar, as she mentioned, definitely a big part of career was the internships. So I started off working for some small defense company up in Orange County, working on their non-lethal weapons program, so things like rubber bullets and different ways that you can sort of disarm crowds in a non-lethal kind of way. Did a couple summers there, got some great experiences, and followed up the following summer, got an opportunity to work at the CIA. So that was very interesting, and sort of set me in a trajectory as far as most of my career. Basically, with that internship, I was able to get a security clearance, and definitely cemented me in working in the defense type of world. So getting involved in different military programs and things like that. After I graduated, which was in '02, graduated electrical engineering major, computer science and math minor, went to work for Lockheed Martin. So Lockheed Martin does a lot of defense kind of work, and that's where I was. Mainly software programs, very large software programs for the Air Force and the Army predominantly. and got some experience sort of across the board. So we were doing big programs, so you get involved in a lot of system engineering type of works, basically taking a program from just ideation phase all the way through deployment and then sustaining it after it's been deployed. So you get some of the things that she had mentioned, like field engineering, system engineering, software engineering, a lot of customer interaction, requirements, things of that nature. And it was fantastic. What's recently is I've moved from defense and I work in commercial now. So I work for Cubic Transportation and we do fare collection. So if you've ever been on the trolley and maybe you went up there, you didn't have a ticket, there's a big metal box that you see and you do, and spits out a ticket and you take your ticket and you get on the trolley.
Does it
That's
make
our
that sound
system.
too? Do. I'm just,
Yeah,
good,
yeah.
I like that.
That's our system. So there's a lot of things going on there. There's a lot of hardware interaction, there's software, there's back end, there's communication that we do from the physical device all the way back to our back servers to do reconciliation for our customer and things like that. So why it's different for me is, coming from defense to commercial is a much different paradigm. Your ability to, as far as create profits for your company and what you're able to charge and things like that are just completely different. Now, what do I do now for Cubic? I'm a senior principal software engineer, but really kind of what I've been brought in for is to bring some of the rigor and the process and sort of the sound fundamentals that you get from defense and apply those to what we do now. The thing about defense is there's lives at stake. There can't be any T uncrossed or I that's not dotted, because that could mean catastrophe. And in fare collection, we're talking about like maybe the ticket doesn't get spit out. So it's not the same kind of level of intensity, but that process and the things you go through is really what I'm bringing to Cubic now. So.
Something interesting that you said, Rasheed, and actually I think there are some similarities with also what Lauren said, if I'm correct. You could tell me that I'm wrong. But both of you mentioned internships as being significant. Luis, you didn't, but I don't know if you think that's also the case. How many of the panelists thinks that the internships are really important?
I think more than internships, networking.
Networking and
it's
internships.
important, that's right,
Really, really important.
who you do.
Also, there was something else that I kind of caught here, and that's that with Rasheed and Lauren, you mentioned you started in industrial and electrical, right?
Industrial and systems.
And electrical. And yet both of you have now a software component to what's going on. So is software important? Is software up and coming? Is that why software? How did that happen from an electrical and an industrial?
Well, I think it's interesting, especially where I'm at now. So when Cubic started, they've been around over 50 years.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I interface with a lot of the engineers. There's literally engineers that have been there 55 years. It's incredible. But I interface with some of them, and they sort of joke around with me about hardware. And Luis and I were talking about this a little earlier. Is basically, you always kind of point the finger. It's the hardware, it's the software. But what they used to do was all very hardware centric, and there was 1% software. It was very, very small. But now things are, there's so many off-the-shelf types of devices. There's things that are already sort of integrated for you, or going onto something, a mobile phone. The hardware is there, perhaps. I'm not trivializing the fact that there's hardware, but I feel like the software spectrum is growing, such that you have a lot more software that's interacting with the hardware, whereas before it was mostly hardware doing most of the heavy lifting. At least that's from my experience, and that's definitely what I'm seeing at my current company.
Yeah, and in my current positions as well, software has been huge. I wish I knew more about software, actually. That's a piece I feel like I'm missing, because I'm doing a lot with on the system side with the software development, software integration, software test. But software is a big piece. They want those systems engineers that know software. They want software engineers that know systems. They want people to be able to move around. And I know you're doing some systems work now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's software background of doing systems, and I'm systems doing some software.
And I'll ask you about future trends in just a little bit, but it seemed like a recurring thing. It's one of the reasons that we're adding software engineering here at the Shiley-Marcos School of Engineering, so students have more experience in software, because I see that as a future trend in many, many different areas. Well, Bob, how about you?
Well,
What you doing now?
Well, what brought me here, quick history, from Newport Beach, California. I went to Loyola High School, then to UCLA, and then got my MBA from Pepperdine. And what brought me to this chair really is I married alumni in Founders Chapel across the way, and our oldest daughter went here, and my wife and I, as was mentioned, were the president of the parent board. But professionally, I am sitting in the job I have today initially through nepotism. So my dad founded the firm in 1954, same year I was born. And really, I worked from back, this tells you how old I am, when we'd actually do drafting on drafting boards. But I have worked up through the ranks, and we do facility planning, industrial engineering, project management, move coordination, and our clients, the larger ones that you'd be familiar with, Titleist, Golf Club Manufacturing, Peregrine Semiconductor, Scott Plastic, but a wide range from Taco Bell to Money Mailer, and most of the work we do is associated with improving your processes as you move, and that's what I was interested in hearing. The much younger and much smarter engineers to my left sharing their involvement, because the integration of systems and software is so prevalent in really all the different companies we serve. Just a very quick one would be Herbalife. When they put in their new system, they went from a manual pick to voice picking, where actually the computer in 7 different languages will tell somebody what to go pick. So the whole integration of systems is a big part, and so that's what brought me here today.
It's really interesting to hear the variety and diversity of the experiences you have, because you're talking about Herbalife to Titleist, and then we're going to the CIA over on the other side. So, I mean, there's a richness, but Bob, what would you say are 2 or 3 skills that have really helped you in your career?
I would say, a general category would be people skills. I think that as a consultant or a consulting engineer, you really have to be a good listener. And that's a tough thing as a consultant sometimes, because you want to consult, you want to share your knowledge. And so I'd really put being really a good listener. One of my mentors that ran all of Mattel Toys in the Orient with 60,000 employees, he taught me to ask at least 100 questions with a new client before you share any kind of consulting. So I think that's a key thing, the people skills of listening, heavy communication, really being a servant. And if you're with me on that, whatever job you're in, and I'm sure this group can share, you come in and your job title might be X. But I'll tell you, if you're interested in growing, and you're interested in learning, and you're interested in helping, there are people in side categories, side departments that would really like your help. And I would say that being a servant. And last but not least is selling. I sell a large percentage of our consulting work, but I don't really care what industry you get into, what area of engineering you get into. I think that really selling is a key thing. So some of your internships you may over the years look at leaning a little bit into that. Next, I'd say is being a student for life. I really continuously read, not just engineering, not just marketing, not just business. I try to be a student. And also, I must say, last year, thanks to Lenny Perry up there on top, I was able to teach here at your wonderful engineering school, facility planning. But I guarantee you this, I learned much more than I shared. So I think any time that you're involved in your career, I think that really getting involved in any kind of teaching. And last would be problem solving. I think that as an engineer and as a consultant, we work with companies sincerely that do $500,000 of volume a year to use aircraft. Well, each one of those different size companies have different problems.
That's great. Bob, did I hear you say that you, with all of your experience, that what you really want to do is come back and teach some classes for us?
That's right. That I hope you got that. Yes. And by the way,
I'm liking it.
I loved
always
it.
look.
And I tell you right now, just to cut to the chase, you know, my wife, again, an alumni from here, said that she had never seen me so motivated during that teaching time. Very challenging in preparation, and again, learned a lot from Lenny Perry and others. But boy, what a stimulating thing, and obviously looking forward to a lot of exciting things for you at USD.
Well, thank you. And we have opportunities, let me tell you that, with a growing student class. You know, I don't know if you know, but we have 500 alumni in engineering, and we currently have 400 students taking classes. So over 22 years, we graduated 500 students. You're part of that group, you guys. But now we have 400 students taking, so we have grown tremendously in the past 5 years to come up to this point. Luis, did Bob leave any important skills out? He mentioned quite a few skills, but you had to have some skills to get to where you are. Did you see anything different?
Pretty tough to follow.
He kind of covered the whole range, didn't he?
A little bit, yeah. I would just about second everything I heard. The other thing I'd like to say, I think it's important that you don't come across as knowing it all. When I'm on the other side of the equation trying to get a consultant, I don't consult for a living, but I deal with the Department of Defense, I deal with large corporations, I deal with people coming my way to try to get a job. And I think I can appreciate intellect without arrogance. The first thing that closes me right away is that arrogant sort of personality. And it's just the way it goes for me. There are people out there that are brilliant, there are people out there that are good at what they do, and there are people out there that have to be clustered. Put in a little corner, you're gonna do your job, and don't let them deal with other people. If you're that smart, knock yourself out. You don't have to have personality skills. Now, if you are most like the rest of us and you are smart, but not Einstein smart, you do have to get along with people. And I think for engineering in particular, we tend to be smarter than most.
We are smart, aren't we? Even the international business students are smart here.
And don't let them go to your head. So that personality skills, carry yourself like you know what you're doing without being arrogant. I think it's important that you keep learning, and then you be adaptable to the disciplines that are coming. So for those double E's here, you have a background, you know how to put, I don't know, ASICs together, and you know how to do embedded processors, and you know about all these things. You have to be able to say, okay, the next generation of skills is not going to be on low-level software, drivers for a PC or assembly code like it was for me 30 years ago, but it's going to be on systems integration, where you need to understand the hardware as well as the software. When I hear software here, it's not so much programming. There's a difference in my mind between programming something and management software development. So at a system level, and I'm assuming that's what you do, is not so much program the device, but somebody else programs it for you. And at some level, you have to do risk management and understand what are the possible failures. At that level, you're not a programmer, you're a software developer. It takes you away from your core skills. You got to recognize that. So I think an ability, a capacity, and a want to learn, ability to get along with people are critical. And after that, I would say my career, I didn't go the route of internships. I went to school at night and things like that. But to me, critically, who you know and who you can get along and how you network yourself. If there's a society in your field in San Diego, for me, the Optical Society of America was a big deal, who you meet and mentorship. So if you can put that together, I think the biggest lesson I can communicate is get along with people. You can be as smart as you think you are or smarter, but unless you can get along with who you're working with, that only takes you so far.
You know, it sounds like when you're saying arrogance and smart, that would be kind of indicative of somebody that doesn't want to learn, and the future changes. And it sounds like all of you have changed in your careers and had to learn new things and morph and move around and become something maybe surprising in what you're doing. That's what I'm hearing from you. Is that correct?
The rigidity that comes along with that kind of personality. I mean, you do want somebody that is flexible. You do want somebody that can say, you know what, I'm wrong, but let me figure it out for you, right?
That's really great. Lauren, any other skills you'd like to mention that you had in becoming successful?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to also talk about networking, but from a different standpoint, for managing your own career. I was in a rotational program, so we were required to take rotations. But a lot of people stayed under the same manager, just doing different rotations under the same manager. I really had to network and create my own career in order to be able to do so many different things that I did. So I think from that, being mobile, as a young engineer, if you are mobile, it opens up so many doors. You tell the company, I will move anywhere. That's what I did. I said, I will go anywhere out of San Diego when I was looking for jobs because I grew up in San Diego. I went to college in San Diego. I told every company, I will work anywhere except San Diego. They thought I was nuts. But being mobile, networking to talk to people, and if you're interested in something, you're at a company, set up a meeting with someone. Can we meet for lunch? I'm interested in what you do. I'm interested in learning what your program does. I've been bold like that all throughout my career. I set up a lunch recently with the head of the engineering at my complex, like at our site. And he accepted, and we met, and we talked, and it opens up doors for the future. Not necessarily a year from now, maybe 5 years from now. It's just you want to continuously use that network. Another thing would be public speaking. I found that a lot of engineers do have trouble with communication. And whenever anyone would come to me and say, we need someone to volunteer for this, we need someone to do this, I would always, yes, I'll take the public speaking, I'll do it. Working in a large company, it really gets people to know who you are. And opens more doors up. I ended up being able to do a training. I taught for a 2-week course for the Air Force where it was just me teaching, and it really helped me even grow even more passionate about my job, being directly with the customer. So I think opening up doors with networking, being mobile, and working on your public speaking more, and putting yourself out there.
Lauren, it's clear that you see challenges and new opportunities as opportunities for growth, individual growth, from networking to teaching in classes. Rasheed, how about you?
Yeah, I think what's been said is incredible, and I agree with a lot of it. One additional area to maybe expand on, and I think it's been said in so many words, is maybe don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. So what I mean by that is, don't be afraid to do something that you don't know, admit that you don't know it, and learn it. I think that's part of definitely what's been said, and the point there is that, a sense of enthusiasm and a willing to just get in there and figure it out and learn. It's sort of, it gives you a couple benefits. For one, you may learn something you didn't know, hopefully you do. In addition to that, it gives you people look at you in a different perspective. This person is always willing to go for it. And maybe down the road there's a program that comes online and only a few people can get selected for it. And they go, do I want this guy who's always complaining, or do I want this person who's always up and ready and willing to get involved and jump in? That's definitely served me well. There was a customer that we had that was in upstate New York, and beautiful area, but one thing, I'm not sure if you know about that area, is in the wintertime, it can have some pretty severe winters. So it's freezing cold, lots of snow. Where we were going to was somewhat difficult to get to. You'd fly in, which meant you fly to Chicago from here, and then you fly to Syracuse, New York, and then you would drive an hour and a half. So it was cumbersome to get to, and in the wintertime, nobody wanted to go. And I was, I'll go. Yeah, send me out there. And it provided an opportunity for me to interface with the customer, get some of that face-to-face, understand kind of what their needs were from a different perspective, because a lot of times you're working from, okay, this is what the customer said somewhere to somebody, and it's got on this piece of paper, and this is what I'm going to do. But until you kind of see what they're talking about and why, you might not fully understand kind of where it's coming from. In addition to that, you get that customer exposure, and if you can do a good job, they can say things to your management and your company about, can you send him out again or send her out again? And that can only do wonders for your career. So, don't be afraid to go down a new avenue that you might not have traveled before, because it might lead to some pretty incredible things.
Thank you. Bob, I'm going to give you a great opportunity here.
Okay.
This is going to be fun. What I want you to do is project yourself back to your school days. Remember those?
Yes.
I have a hard time remembering myself. What would you do differently to prepare yourself? Or would you? Did you do it right? Or is there something you do differently? Thinking about our students and advice we can give them.
Yeah, I would say that probably if I had to do my career over, I would have worked with other companies before I worked with, you could say, the family business. I actually was born, as I said, into the business, and I literally started off emptying waste paper baskets, and now I run the business. But really, there was the Bob June that I mentioned that was with Mattel Toys. He used to tell me that's the one thing that he thinks that I should have done. So I would say that, as all have mentioned, I think a mix of internships would be something I would do differently, number one. Number two, I think that what I would have probably, in hindsight, I would have worked for a manufacturer for a while. Because a lot of our clients are manufacturers and distribution companies, so I probably would have done that. But I was thinking, it's kind of interesting, I've probably had 2,000 bosses, okay? Boy, I change jobs a lot, don't I? But really, I think that the variety of internships are not only good related to the mix of what I would have enjoyed and that you might enjoy, and you might pick an internship sometimes that's a little off-center from your main focus, and I'll tell you why. I think there's a lot that you can learn from different bosses. Some of our clients, our bosses, I have just really loved working with. Some that I won't mention their names have really been terrible in how they treat their people, or terrible how unethical they are, or whatever. So, obviously, you don't want to spend a lot of time with those type, but when you're working in internships, take a good look at the style and the approach of the bosses, and of course, embrace the ones that characteristics you like and lean away from the others.
I bet that goes for project managers and other people you work with. Look at them and see what really works for you and how to emulate those sorts of activities. I know I've had mostly good bosses, but I've also had anybody had a bad boss here?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was quick.
One quick thing to add, just to that, which is so powerful. Anybody that comes to work with us over the years, there's been a lot of just brilliant MBAs, brilliant engineers, from USD, from Harvard, from UCLA, Stanford, and the like. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I've really done much better in the last, literally, 6 to 10 years versus the total of 35 I've been doing it, is learning from these people that come to work for you. So if they work next to you or around the corner from you, I mean, we have a total different system of how we track and manage our jobs at a much higher level of satisfaction due to a guy named James Gapp who still works for us. But boy, there's always, and he came aboard after I'd been doing it 30 years, and sincerely, dramatic improvement in performance, in satisfaction, and in more work. My dad used to say, he passed away about 15 years ago, your best salesman is good work. That may seem trite, but boy, it's powerful.
Great. Luis, you want to go back to school?
Do I want to go back to school? I don't think I could right now. I looked at some of my thesis work and I cannot understand it.
I did the same thing. When I was moving here, I was pulling out old math books. I have a bachelor's in mathematics, by the way, and I found some stuff, some real analysis stuff that I was doing that's all theoretical. You never see a number again in your life. I'm looking at it saying, I did this?
Yeah.
It's like 5-page solutions. Yeah, I understand what you mean. But if you could, if you
Maybe-
could go back, would
My-
you do anything differently or did you do it right?
Well, of course not. I mean, I don't think, if you can say you did it right, then you're wrong.
All right, you guys. When I ask you a question, don't say you did it right.
There's no way. Otherwise, you'd be running Microsoft or something, right?
That's
You
right.
better like- I think for me, I mean, my experience is a little bit different. I didn't go to school full-time. I have only once worked for a large company, which personally, no offense, I didn't like. So for 40 years, I've been doing my own thing, starting companies, doing a little entrepreneurial something here, doing a design something there, filing patents, and just the creative juices of electrical engineering and applied physics, which is what I enjoy doing. In the process, what I got excited about was the creativity part of engineering. And what you're hearing a little bit here is a transition between being an engineer and being a manager. And I think you're going to have to make a choice somewhere along your career as to whether you're going to stay as an engineer or become a manager, or a program manager, or a technical type management skill. I mean, that is great, and it's a choice you want to make. There are benefits to both. I mean, I know engineers that have been engineers for 50 years, and they're the best engineers I know. They consciously chose not to go into the management side of things. One of my favorite ones was just you cannot make a manager into an engineer, but you can always make an engineer into a bad manager. So whether that's true or not, I'm not really sure. But I say that distinction I'm going to draw. And as far as my academic experience, I think if I was to do something differently, would be try to be forward-looking to those skills that are in the field that are critical. Let me give you some specifics. Nowadays, with an electrical engineering degree, you're going to graduate, you're going to know a lot of stuff. You better be good at math, but you better be good at computers too. Electrical engineering is not the sort of thing that you can divorce from understanding computer-aided engineering and computer-aided design. So you can be a fantastic engineer, a good mathematician. If you don't have the right computer skills, you're not going to succeed. Right now, in your shoes, I would try to understand how Altium works, if you're an electrical engineer. SolidWorks, how interface the two. MATLAB, MathCAD, any of those things. And what's important, and I think is critical, is that those tools are just tools, that you understand what's behind them. I notice a lot of times with new engineers, they're very good at those skills, but they don't understand how it works. And then at one point, you're going to make a mistake. So for my academic experience, what I would do is look for mentors, people that are out there actually exploiting the knowledge that you just learned, and look for future trends in technology. So that's something I didn't do. I followed a sort of a planned structure for you that your counselors or school, they do their best. But in our field, the technology changes so quickly that in 4 years, you're going to see things that weren't there 4 years ago. Keep your thumb in the pulse and make sure you know what that is.
Thank you, Lauren. You didn't graduate that long ago.
I didn't.
So we almost had a perfect program at that time. But what would you do different?
So like I said, I was in industrial and systems engineering in 2010. And directly after that, I started my master's in industrial engineering from NJIT. Now, the first thing I would do different is the program for my master's I did online. I wouldn't recommend online programs. For me, they didn't work. I wish I could have done something different, but I got the benefit of being able to travel around the world instead, which got to weigh your benefits. So I think that would be the first thing. I wish I could have done my master's at school. Second thing is looking now at where I'm working and the different opportunities. When I look for positions, either in my company or out of my company, when I'm looking for positions, I notice that software engineering is huge. We were going back to before. I wish that I did take C++, but I wish I would have gone a little further with programming skills. Even if that wasn't something I was going to be doing on a day-to-day basis after college, it's still really important to know those skills, to be able to communicate with other engineers. So I wish I would have kind of gone more with sophomore as well. And then when you were talking about different software, like using MATLAB, I found those skills are huge. I wish that I would have learned MATLAB in college. I didn't learn it. But I did learn it on the job. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity. But skills like knowing different simulation software, knowing Minitab, knowing MATLAB, many different tools are very helpful. So I know sometimes you're learning them in a class and you're like, I'll probably never use this again. I know how to use it. Know those skills, like really pay attention because you'll be using them in the field. And if you know it and they say, oh, does anyone know how to use a a statistical analysis tool, and no one does, but you do, you'll get extra opportunities there. So I think that's pretty key. And then when I did my master's also in industrial engineering. And I was talking to Dr. Perry about this. Although it was a great master's, I feel like I wish I would have done a different master's other than my undergraduate, because I know I want to be in engineering, but I learned just more about industrial engineering. I wish I would have learned another discipline as well. So I think I would have done a maybe computer science or a different engineering master's than my undergraduate.
So you like diversity and flexibility and breadth and
Well, I
skills?
find
is
it's
what you
really
like.
important for jobs when if you know tons of skills, you have tons of security in your jobs. And that's kind of...
But it's kind of interesting because I think, at least from companies that I've talked to, there are different tracks. There's deep technical expertise, and someone can go down a kind of a narrow technical expertise and become an expert at something. They can be broad, or they can even branch off into management. There are different tracks for engineers, and so it's not you're not going to end up as one. You're going to end up as one of those, and you have to kind of choose your track. Is that maybe what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and kind of when I'm still at a point that I don't know what I want to do 10 years from now. I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing. But if you open up those doors, open up the opportunities for yourself, then it kind of brings you where you want to be eventually. It's kind of what I believe. So.
Rasheed, you want to go back to school?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I remember telling myself when I was undergrad, I go, okay, Rasheed, if you just work hard, do a good job, I won't make you do anything else. And then I graduated, and then I'm like, okay, I need to do a master's. So I did my master's, like, okay, Rasheed, just do real good again, no more after this, I promise. So I told myself twice, I'm
we're
not
done
doing
going to school. That's it.
I'm not doing it.
Though you do it every day anyway. You go to school.
Exactly. There is one thing, that I was thinking about, and I feel very fortunate with the experiences that I've had and where I am at. I'm very happy. And the advice that I'm going to give here, I didn't even follow myself, but it's difficult. I feel like if I could have gone back in time and sort of thought a little bit more about where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do, instead of just sort of, being in the moment. So I was always about, okay, I need to take care of business right now. I need to get these things done because that's what I'm doing. I need to, handle what I'm doing at school. I got to work on these internships. But, those were important for the future, but I didn't say I needed to do ABC to get to where I wanted to be. It just sort of happened. So I was lucky in that sense. I was very fortunate. But I think I would have gone back and tried to think, and I know it's very hard to say that. You don't know where you kind of want to go, but try to project where you want to be and do the steps. I'll give you an example. One of the developers on my team at Lockheed Martin, he really wanted to work for LinkedIn. And so he thought about, okay, what are the things that I want to do that I'm going to be able to sell myself to LinkedIn? Well, he was a software engineer, so he goes, okay, I want to have a portfolio of my work that's my work, because he couldn't talk about what he did at work necessarily. He could talk generally about it, but there's intellectual property, plus some of the programs were classified. He couldn't really bring that to the table. So what he did is just did side projects. So he created Android apps to be able to showcase some of the work that he could do in the mobile world. And the apps weren't to make him money or anything like that. They gave him away free. They were just to show, hey, here's some of my work, and get them rated. So he would say, here's my app, and it's been, one-upped by 100,000 people, for example. Another thing he would do is he would just go on to coding websites, and people put questions like, hey, how do you do this, or what do you do there, and put the answers. And he would say, like, oh, this is how you do it, and solve it. So he's spending his off time doing these things which aren't making him any money or aren't contributing to anything his right now, but in the future, he was able to go to LinkedIn and say, look at the stuff that I did. I did this and this and this, and they're like, this is incredible. Just to kind of tell you what happened is now he leads up their mobile development program at LinkedIn. So he got involved there, he moved up, he worked for LinkedIn, hugely successful. And just his attention to all those little steps that he needed to make that huge, enormous step for his career, I found incredible. And I wish I would have had those types of foresights myself. The one thing I will say about my situation that I think is definitely something that I would make sure that you would want to pay attention to is talking about that humility and that being sort of grateful for the experiences and the opportunities you have. is I think I always was, but definitely want to reinforce how huge that is. Because for one, it shows that you are appreciative and you're humble in the sense you're not, arrogant or cocky about the situation. It also helps solidify those networks and those relationships that you built for the future, because you never know when you're going to need those opportunities, and it's it's a network that you're growing from the moment you start down your path. So that would be some advice I would give.
Rasheed, do you ever hire anybody?
A lot, yeah.
You participate on that side?
Yep.
So if you're out hiring somebody and you're looking at these students coming out of school,
Yeah.
what do you look for? What are you looking for in somebody you hire?
What
How do you know you want to hire them?
For me, honestly I can tell very quickly. I can tell within the first few moments, and hopefully for them that the answer is that I like them in that first few minutes, because if I don't, they've got a lot of work to do to turn it around. But what I'm looking for is basically an ability for them to start showing me how they're thinking. I don't need somebody to come to me and I ask them a question and they regurgitate an answer from one of the books. Like, especially in software engineering, there's these books like How to Crack the Coding Interview or Programming Interviews Exposed, or one of these books, and it goes through all these like very tough programming questions and it gives you the answer and how to solve them. Great, okay, you read the book and you can tell me that. That's one thing. But can you think through the type of problem that I'm throwing at you? I could care less if the answer is right. What I want is someone that's able to communicate what they're thinking, how they're going about it, how they're solving the problem, that they're able to extract information from me. Maybe didn't give them enough for them to even be able to know what I'm really asking for. Attention to detail. If you're just kind of breezing through and missed a whole bunch of stuff, that's not going to turn out well for my program. So I wouldn't be interested in that type of candidate. And along those attention to detail things, just even how you present yourself when you show up. You don't need to have a custom Italian suit when you show in, but you should be, that you got to show that you care. You need to be, put together, that you took the time to think about, this is something I want. Not that you're just like, you woke up and you go, oh, I got to go to this, and you showed up. And literally, I have people that I instantly get that impression. It's like they don't even care to be there. No enthusiasm, just kind of like, what did you ask me? I literally had this one person that I interviewed, and I asked him a question, or asked her a question, and she replied, like moments later, like there was a long pause. She goes, wait, what did you just say? I was totally zoning out right now. Are you kidding me? These types of things, like it blows me away the type of experiences I have in the interviews. So just talk it through. Keep that communication going, because even if you don't know the answer, if you can show that you care to try to get there, that you have a process to try to figure out, that might be what they're looking for. It certainly is what I am.
Great. Bob, I'll bet you've hired a few people in your life.
I have, and
Yeah?
I really enjoy the process, and I really find, because I'm hiring engineer MBAs, I really focus on the people skills, because the process we look at prior to bringing somebody in is that they'll be, I'd say, stellar engineers, let's say, and they've got good experience, and the skill side is normally very strong. So I always find, I talk about this a lot, and actually how I sell our work that might be helpful to you, is you can have a consultant and they'll have an art and a science side, if you're with me. And the science side maybe is obvious, the mathematics, the problem solving, the computer skills, a lot of the things we've been talking about. The art side is how are you going to communicate with a client? And that could be the head guy at Hughes Aircraft, or it could be a person in a startup that has 3 employees. How is that person going to interact with that client or the team members of the client? So I think that I really look at how is that person going to represent our firm to the client, because oftentimes we have a relatively small firm. You go in as a team, as a junior consultant, but relatively soon, if you're good, you're there with the client. And so what you just mentioned, that the person that comes to work, they may not be in a suit and tie, but they better come prepared. And I'm really viewing them from the seat of the client. How's the client going to like this young man or young woman? How is this client going to feel about their communication, their attention, I think is key. We look really carefully at how organized the person is. We look at, which was mentioned, the computer skills are critical. We do a lot of CAD design. We do a lot of work with computers, so that's a critical one. But I'll tell you this, at least in our field, we have to have the science, don't get me wrong. But I will pick art over science every single time. Now, you might say, well, that's assuming that the science is at a minimal acceptable level for what we do. That would be the case. But I would say if you're super heavy on the science side, and maybe you haven't had experience in an internship where you've had, which all three to my left have had phenomenal experience in interacting with different people, I'd really strongly encourage that, because I find in not only our own firm, but in firms we serve, whether it's Hughes Aircraft or B Aerospace or other wonderful engineering firms, the people that grow and blossom, yes, they have the science, but they have the art as this group has.
And I think by arts, what we often talk about in accreditation terms are professional skills. So it's the communication skills, it's the ethics and understanding ethics, it's maybe understanding society and cultural norms, and it may be teamwork sorts of skills. I think that's what you mean by arts, right?
Absolutely, and you know, the other thing you'll notice is that, let's say you have 3 people on an engineering team that are working for a client. One thing that we notice very quickly is whether or not the new person is a team player, or there's a tendency for some, I think it's an immaturity for some, that they'll want to wave their flag of how smart they are or how cool they are, sometimes with a direct or subtle way of kind of pushing down one of the other team members. And we move very quickly either to correct that or make a move. So when you do get that job or internship, I'll tell you, people are watching your performance, but I'll tell you, the good bosses are looking at, are you helping your buddy here versus kind of trying to one up.
Luis, you ever hire anybody?
Oh, many times.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What do you look for?
I think for me it's kind of like Rasheed was saying, the first impression. So whenever a person comes through the door, everybody goes through these. I mean, you meet somebody on the street and you can kind of right away say, rightly or wrongly, more or less how that person feels to you. So preparation. The person has to come like he wants the job, he or she wants the job. That's critically important. Also preparing what it is they are expecting. If I am working for my company and they come over for an application, they show up, I'm going to ask them, what do you know about this company? I mean, have you even done any kind of homework at all as to what's going on? So the more prepared, both in appearance and background, and you were saying a little earlier, this is my portfolio, this is what I have done, and this is how it fits with your needs. So to me, preparation and presence is the first thing. Then after that, it's certainly how do you think this person is going to get along with your team? And the last thing I look at is the science background. Of course, the science background sort of trumps everything, right? I mean, if they cannot do the job, they cannot do the job. Right. But all else being equal, I would take somebody with a lower or lesser of a science background and all the other soft skills well developed and a very brilliant scientist that can get along with people.
Oh, that's interesting. Lauren, you hire anybody?
I haven't hired anyone, but I've been involved in the interview process quite a bit for our leadership program. And although a lot of the things have been touched on already, the excellent communication skills is very important, along with the interest in the company. Really over-prepare yourself for the interview. Study for the interview. I know it sounds crazy, but do it. I mean, spend a lot of time really preparing for each interview. And then the last thing, which wasn't mentioned, I don't think, is coming to the interview with motivation to grow, and you ask the company, what opportunities do you have in your company so that I can continue to learn, continue to grow? I think that really impresses the interviewers.
All right, it's really time for us to turn this over to the students. I did miss a question, and so I might let you answer, but you only each get one sentence. So I want you to frame this. Let's see. This is an interview skill. Yes, it's an interview skill to be able to be concise. So within your areas, where do you see job opportunities in engineering? So if you were going to talk about the future, so I'm not asking you necessarily to look at the whole big picture of engineering. Where do you see some growth? So are you thinking you've only got one sentence? This is going to be really hard, Bob, to do that. Can you?
Process improvement.
Process improvement. Rasheed.
Bob stole it.
It could be squared.
minds, yeah.
Process improvement squared.
Yeah, I think doing less with more.
Doing less with more. Laura?
And we were pushing it before, but software engineering keeps growing and growing. I see a lot of growth in that.
Luis.
Program management.
Program management. Interesting, all of those. All right. You've been all scintillated. I hope. This is the opportunity for you to be out there, to be conspicuous. You're starting your networking, by the way. This is the point where you start the networking and you're prepared. Did you come prepared? Questions. What would you ask the panel? Yes, they're in the back. And I'm going to repeat your questions because we're recording this.
Absolutely. I'll just speak it out. So my question was a little bit towards Bob as well as the rest of the panel. As you know, there's a lot of bells and whistles here in San Diego in terms of careers. There's aerospace, there's Qualcomm, there's a lot of things. But you mentioned about working for the family company in a small firm. You mentioned process improvement, so manufacturing seems to be a theme. So I would just, the question basically was that premise was, can you walk us through a bit of your thought process in terms of how you guide your career versus maybe into a firm or a small family company versus going after a lot of the aerospace giants we have here. So that sort of thinking process for your career.
And you think I can repeat that? All right, with all of the varied opportunities there are in the San Diego area, Bob and others, could you help maybe walk us through a process of how you think about and navigate a career from small to big? Does that kind of get it?
Great question. I would say that I would highly recommend that you look to get involved in a small or medium manufacturing or process type of business where you have definitely an owner or a general manager that would be willing to allow you to work in different departments. Because I think that what we do as consultants is one of the things we have to do is we have to quickly identify what the current state is of a business. So if you could get into a smaller, medium-sized business, sometimes, not always, you may have the opportunity to work in, let's say, shipping and receiving, work in the work in process. You may actually learn to use some of the assembly machinery. You might get to work a little bit in the quality control. So one of the things I've found with some engineers that do internships and then jobs that sometimes will speed their actual growth in knowledge is through those experiences. And then if you happen to go to work for a larger firm, and this was mentioned earlier, you have an unbelievable opportunity. Most don't take people up on it, and it was mentioned a couple of times, is to ask for meetings with department heads that are not yours. And most people really enjoy sharing their knowledge. You can feel this group today, right? But I'll tell you, it's amazing how few engineers, how few people, period, will leverage that. Because if you ask me, and let's say I ran the shipping and receiving department, and you're in the computer area of engineering, and you say, can we have lunch? I want to learn about shipping and receiving. So that would be a bit of a guideline there.
Okay, another question. Yes, Zach.
So we've heard talks about masters. Should you look to come out of undergraduate and go directly into a master's program, or would you think it'd be more beneficial to get with the company, kind of find out what they want, or if they would help pay for it?
All right, so the question dealt with, is it best to come out of your bachelor's degree and go directly to work, or to maybe go into a master's degree directly? I think that's what you're asking, and advice from panelists on that.
So I guess I went directly because my program that I was in required me to. I wish I would have waited, because then maybe I would have gone a different route in my master's. I think waiting is beneficial because then you can start working and kind of figure out where you want to go, what you want to do. The only problem with waiting is a lot of people wait and then wait and wait, and then it's 5 years after undergraduate and they really don't want to go back anymore. So it's kind of either getting it done right away without maybe knowing exactly what master's, or waiting and working a little bit.
And was your master's paid for, Lauren?
Yes.
So that was another benefit of going to a company and having it paid for by them. There are many companies that do that.
Yeah, like my company pays for masters up to a certain amount of money, but for the leadership program, there's not really a cap on the money.
Rasheed, you did your master's. Was yours paid for?
It was paid for,
And,
yeah.
and how would you approach it?
Well, yeah, I think I would agree. I think the waiting is good. At least this is my perspective on it, in that when I was doing my master's, it was to solve a need for my current work, and I could apply the things I was learning directly. And I would even steer conversations in classes to what I selfishly wanted to know to solve something I was dealing with at work. So it's very applicable, which is good, because you know what you're doing and what you need to know to do what you're doing, which is good. And of course, it was paid for, which was huge. Downfall is it doesn't get any easier. You don't have less things to do 10 years after you graduate than maybe right when you graduate. It's like, you know, life keeps getting more complex. So
And you buy cars and houses and those things, and then
Yeah, and kids
and have
and
children.
whatnot.
If you do that, then it becomes more complex. Luis, how did you do it?
I did my master's sort of part-time at UCSD, attending classes as I could. Now, I would answer your question by first asking you, what's your major? To me, mechanical. In your case, you can have a job with a bachelor's, right? There are some degrees that will not allow you that. So if you have a strong background in mechanical engineering, you have the right soft skills, you have the right computer skills, you know SolidWorks, I would hope, or any of those things, and if you don't learn them, then I would go get a job. And then I see which area of mechanical engineering is of interest to me to specialize in my master's.
Because masters are about specialization.
Exactly.
You become deeper technically
Right.
in depth.
I mean, you can
correct?
go into vibration analysis, thermal analysis, you can go into tolerance analysis, risk management. There are just so many little areas you can specialize out of your bachelor's that you would not know what it is you like today without some experience, you know, and materials. You can do a lot of things. So with your degree, I would go to work.
And then there's even the difference of perspective going into a business side, because Bob, you did an MBA as a
Right.
master's
I was
degree.
going to say, you know, in our business, really over the years, we've had successful people that were undergraduate engineers. We've had some that have, let's say, some mathematical undergraduate and their MBA. For us, I'd say over the 35 years I've been doing it, the combination of undergraduate engineering with an MBA has been really, I'd say, spectacular. Now, if you were going to lean toward that combo, I would work for a while. Because, again, as was mentioned, you get out there, you're working as an engineer, you're seeing what you like, and then if your thought is an MBA, when you go back to get your MBA, and I did it at night, so I kept working, you don't have to do that, but I thought that was a good thing for me, is that literally, as you were mentioning, you know, I would steer the conversation in my organization or marketing or whatever topic was into a client requirement that we happen to be working on now. So that was a great experience for me. So the MBA is not for all careers, but I think a lot of it is really, as has been mentioned in different ways, when you go back for your master's of whatever type, if you have a sincere interest and passion for whatever that is, then you're going to get the most out of it. But if it is an MBA, I'd work for a while. I think you'll get more out of it.
Yeah, there are certainly some different paths one can take in a master's degree and in professional, professional degrees or technical degrees. I think we have time for just one more question. Hand popped up in the back, we got it.
Earlier, Bob talked about his mentor at Chell, and I'm just wondering if the rest of you had mentors and how you came about getting mentors and any advice you would have on finding a mentor.
That's a great question. The question is that did you as panelists have mentors? How do you go about getting a mentor, if you have any advice for that? Because Bob talked about one of his mentors in the past. So who wants to do that?
I think it's critically important that you do get a mentor. Now, there are probably, depends on your personality, your background, what engineering skill you have, different ways to do it. For me, it was somebody I met at work. It was one of the top optical scientists in the world. He was in his 70s and the nicest guy ever. I mean, he really took me under his wing and he helped me through a lot of these things. So knowing what I know today, I think I would have explored avenues that are presented through the university like these, or at societies that are related to your field. There's a lot of people, believe me. I don't know that much about the mechanical engineering side of things, but electrical engineering, optical physics, lasers, software, there are societies in the area that meet all the time with people like me, about my age, 50s or something, that are coming around just trying to share knowledge. So that's where I would go. But find somebody you like, you can get along with.
I work in a big company, and I kind of would just reach out and I would know people from different events. I would see them, and I would reach out, email them, and say, could we meet for lunch sometime? And then I would ask them, will you be my mentor? Can we meet once a month? I'd like to learn this from you. Be specific on what you want to learn. And it really helps along the way.
And you were that direct, say, will you be my mentor?
Yeah.
Wow.
We were told to in my leadership program. We were told we had to get 2 mentors. So we would have to just go out, and it was also being in a big company. They really promote people being mentors for people as well. So it was a company-wide thing. We want mentorships happening, and they kind of just advertised it, and so it wasn't weird for me to go say that.
That's pretty good. I mean, when I went out, I was asking people for advice, and people became mentors as advice, but I never said, will you be my mentor?
Sorry. So
that's great. I'm glad you're so aggressive.
What I was trying to say is that with the big company, we had mentorship programs, so you kind of go and ask them to be your mentor.
That's great.
And that's how it opened up the doors
Yeah.
on my end.
Rasheed?
Yeah, I did. I definitely had I had different mentors throughout my time. One of the ones that was sort of the most unlikely, which I would say is, never underestimate that someone could be your mentor. One of the programs that I worked on, we had a subcontractor, so we were like in charge of them. This was actually when I would go back east to upstate New York, and I would be out there, and we would have our subcontractors come out there, at least a representative from them. And this one guy, he would be out there almost all the time when I was. And he was only a few years older than I was, but he was really into the field that I really cared about. And we were in a situation where we had to be sort of, there with the customer, out in the field, shared a lot of time with each other, but we would just get to talking back and forth. And whether he even knows it today or not, I'm not sure, but just the kind of exchanges that we shared and the information and, me asking him just questions about how he got into things and how he would solve different problems. He provided a mentorship to me that I use today. I mean, he still used some of the things that he shared with me in my current job. So
That's really interesting. It's 3 different approaches. One is all the professional societies and all the ways to do it. One is being direct, and one is finding advice. Bob, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to let you know, which I think is interesting, mentors are everywhere. And actually, I have a mentor right now, and I'm going to turn 60 in May, and he's 82. And I met this mentor on a flight from Chicago to Orange County. And this guy, a brilliant guy that has built multiple manufacturing businesses across the country and then sold those, and now he'll only invest in manufacturing businesses that he can have a piece of the action on. At 82, he today is in Chicago meeting at a manufacturing plant that he has actually tripled their volume in the last 4 years. So at 82, he's got, kind of your age energy still. But I just thought I'd mention that because it is so true. There are mentors out there, and the right type of people, this guy just loves, we meet once a month, and it's just phenomenal. So at 60, I've still got a mentor.
I think that's wonderful. I hope you all recognize that we had here today a panel of people who care. They care enough to take time off, to be here. And as I spoke with them on the phone, it's partly because they care about your success. They want the students from USD to be successful, so they're willing to share a piece of their life, and probably more than than even sitting here. You've got one that wants to teach, but others who are telling you about internships and opportunities. So I hope you take the opportunity to connect with these potential mentors, in a way, for advice at least. They might not be able to be all of your mentors, but I'm certain that they'd be willing to give advice. But Luis, Lauren, Rasheed, Bob, I want to thank you, and I hope you will all thank them for what they did today.
And thank you very much. Really appreciate it. So that concludes our program. We do hope that you'll come forward and introduce yourselves to the panelists and take this opportunity to ask any one-on-one questions that you might have. And please fill out your evaluation forms. That's what helps us to get better at these programs. And again, thank you to all of our co-sponsors and for all of your help. Thank you all very much.
Meet you all. Such a great variety.
It was fun. Yes. Take care.
Under over.
Bob.